Hey, what's up? You guys are listening to the Are You Listening Podcast, Season 2, Episode 4. Let's get it.
Welcome to another episode of the Are You Listening Podcast. Geo and Aaron, Happy New Year to you both. We got a lot of really good things to catch up on and excited to have you join us today for this episode. We got Aaron Breitman on the pod with us. First and foremost, just go around the room. Geo, Aaron, how are you both doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, we're coming off a win right now. I think a much needed win for Rutgers. So, everything's good in that realm. And then personally, man, can't really complain. New Year's was good. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And obviously in the thick of it in the Big Ten play, and happy to see Rutgers play the way they did the other night, and hoping they can build on it here. Not that the schedule gets any easier, though, for sure.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's been a roller coaster ride, to say the least, up and down. And you see glimpses of hope and a lot of opportunity left for the Scarlet Knights on their docket for them to be able to get some big wins potentially as we start to get closer to the Big Ten tournament conference up and coming. But Aaron, really excited to have you on. I would say a guy that has a pulse on what's going on with all things RU. So ahead of jumping into the team and what they've been up to this year, just a little bit about your backstory. If you wanted to tell, the listeners for this podcast about how you become so passionate about Rutgers athletics, what is there to know?
Yeah, so I actually moved to New Jersey because my father got a job with Rutgers back in the 80s. So I've been going to Rutgers games since I was literally 6 years old, dating myself here, but that was in the 1983, 84. So, a lifelong fan, obviously, and then went to Rutgers as a student in the late 90s. I graduated in 2000. So I've been to plenty of games over the years, at the RAC specifically. It was at the 89 game when they beat Penn State to make the NCAA tournament. Been at plenty of exciting games there. And obviously the Garden, the Big East tournament was fun going to every year. So a lot of memories, obviously with football as well, even men's soccer back in the day. They were, a powerhouse, a couple guys in the national team, Alexi Lawless, and used to go see them as a kid too. So a lot of great memories at Rutgers, and obviously my family connections there with my father working there so long. So it's kind of in my blood, and it was just kind of a natural thing, when fan sites kind of became a thing and SB Nation had an opening, I kind of jumped at it and kind of took off in a way I never expected it to. I wasn't even on Twitter at the time. This is 2015. And it was really fun to have that opportunity and have that perspective to be able to share and kind of, join in with Rutgers fans. And I've always looked at it that way, that I'm a fan like everybody else, and to be able to converse with fans in this way has been really unique and special. And now it's kind of transitioned to my own thing where I have my own podcast, and it's really fun to continue to do that. And I've obviously spoken to both of you guys over the years, and it's great to be here to talk to you guys. But just in terms of having the experiences that I've had along the way, it's I wouldn't trade it for the world.
What has that transition been like, going from a writer to a podcast?
It kind of was. It was an evolution over time. I never thought I'd be comfortable doing it, but when I was out on the banks, I wanted to start a podcast, and I actually sought someone out that had that experience. Lance Glenn, he kind of ran it for a few years, and he ended up leaving. And he was a producer for 24/7 Sports, college football podcasting. So when he left, I kind of was like, well, let me just try it out, see how it goes. And it turned out to be kind of a great starting point for me. And then once I left and started my own site, Scarlett Faithful, I was like, well, I have to have a podcast as part of it. And it's just evolved over time. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it. And, I now do it daily. It kind of shoot from the hip sometimes in terms of what to cover, but it's fun having guests on too. And it's now a way that, as a writer, it's just, I have another career. I have a family. I just didn't have the time to do it anymore. But a podcast is a way for me to hop on and kind of express myself and give my take on things in a way that's a lot more manageable. And honestly, it's become a lot more fun too.
You mentioned
That's really cool.
Balancing out two different acts of having a full-time career. I know you mentioned you worked for many years in the hospitality space and your cool backstory about getting or cutting your teeth in that area at Napolitano's in New Brunswick, which is now Deltas. How has that balancing act been for you? It's a labor of love to be able to come home at night when you have a family and other things to worry about, and then put an extra effort, to tap into this passion.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's definitely been a balancing act. My wife is amazing, so she was very supportive for many years. It was hard for me to get down to games because I live in North Jersey, so I'm over an hour away from New Brunswick. But Rutgers just made it great for me too, in terms of just helping, in terms of me getting access to all the coaches and players when I want to have them on, and just post game stuff. It's while I would love to be at games, I'm still able to. Give my commentary watching games, from afar, and obviously you miss that vibe of being there and the energy. And I've made it down a few times. I was at the Princeton game this year, but yeah, it's certainly a balancing act, and one that certainly it's a labor of love, because I feel now it's like a responsibility, because people reach out to me and they want to know, to help talk them off the ledge after a bad loss, or they want to be excited about a big win. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I've learned how to manage it a little bit better, and also my job in the hospitality world. I have a much better lifestyle, quality of life now. I was doing restaurants and bars when I was younger, and that was nights, weekends, all the time. Now I work in a corporate facility, so I'm Monday through Friday. A lot more structure, which helps as well to be able to do it all at the same time.
Love it. If you had to say one word to categorize where Rutgers basketball is at this juncture in the season, what would that word be?
Evolving. I think that they're evolving. I think one thing people haven't really taken into account, when I say things like this, sometimes I get, oh, it's an excuse, but they haven't had a full rotation healthy the entire season. And you can still count, like, if Jeremiah Williams becomes eligible, but between Austin Williams, Mag, and even Jamichael Davis to a degree, I mean, they haven't all been fully healthy. Multiple players have been on the injury report every game. So I think that's a big part of it. I really do. And I think that also, and I actually wanted to get your guys' perspective on this, because you were both leaders of the program when you were there. Having veteran guys come in on a 1-year, plan, I'm sure that's got to be part of the gelling part that's been a little maybe harder than any of us kind of saw coming in terms of them just learning how to play together. And I feel like that you're starting to see signs that they're working that out. But I think that for me gives hope, because I think that this team is still figuring things out. Pikel's still figuring out the rotations that work together. I think you've seen Austin Williams obviously emerge now. But I think that that's a big part of it. Everyone expected, the overseas trip, and this team's going to be ready from day one. And obviously Mag coming back and him working off the rust. I think it's just a process. And it's like you said, there's a lot of opportunities still on the schedule. And I think that this team's best basketball is still ahead of them.
I 100% agree. And I think people are going to be extremely surprised by Jeremiah Williams if he is able to return. I mean, I think he's a starter. I think he's a starter when he comes back. He's that good. He has that type of Caleb McConnell energy to him on defense. I'm not going to say that he's the exact same type of defender, but he has that grittiness and toughness to him. And then on the offensive side of things, he's a very good basketball player. And then talking about what you were just saying about the veterans, I think that's been the toughest part for this team, is that the guys who I think showed the most leadership qualities are the new guys. So, a guy like Austin Williams, he made such a big impact in the game just due to his energy and just his presence overall. But sometimes that's hard when you're a new guy coming in to kind of lead in that way. Jeremiah, same thing. I think his presence and his communication skills will be top notch for this team. But again, he's a new guy and he's not playing right now, so that's tough for him. And then Noah Fernandez is a veteran point guard, but same type of deal. It's kind of hard to come in as a point guard and just start calling the shots when you're brand new to the team. So I think those three guys are the most primed to be leaders, but they're all new. So I think that's really tough for a team like this. I mean, obviously you have guys like Mawat and Dre and Cliff who have been here, but none of those guys are like extremely vocal in terms of leadership. When we were when I was in school with them, that wasn't really their role, and they weren't expected to do that. So now you're asking these guys to kind of step into something that they're not used to, and that's tough. That's tough for guys. So I agree, though. I think that they're definitely evolving, and we haven't even talked about Emmanuel either, who's also coming off of an injury, who's going to be another big body inside. I think this team's definitely evolving, and they're moving in the right direction. Just got to stay the course and block out that outside noise. I know it's never easy to do.
Definitely not. I love that term. Evolving is a good representation of a team that has a getting better agenda, and they understand where they're not the greatest and what they need to tap into to keep themselves in games. And to Jeremiah and the point that you made about what he could potentially be for this group, a big guard, which is something that
Yeah.
I think this team is really missing considering years past. The average height of that 3 guard rotation is what, around 6'1", maybe 6'2", and Noah Fernandes, brings that down on average pretty dramatically, and he's down there fighting and trying to attack the legs of opposing 6'10", 6'11" bigs. You mix in a guy that can go down there and be physical like Austin Williams has shown, and I think that is a really another added value piece. So really, really appreciate that. And just to recap of where we are in the season since we last recorded, 15 games in, Rutgers is 9-6 overall, 1-3 in the conference. And I think there's a 4-way or a 5-way tie as of this moment in time. And again, a lot of games left, 16 games left in the Big Ten slate for Rutgers, 7 of which are at home. But the last couple of games, again, they've been up and down since we last recorded. Rutgers took a loss to Iowa, 86-77 on the road in Iowa City, but then was able to bounce back 66-57. Give your initial thoughts of the Iowa game, and then we'll transition over to what was able to transpire at Jersey Mike's Arena against Indiana. Aaron, over to you.
Yeah, I think obviously 1 of 15 to start the Iowa game is pretty tough. I think it does go back to the whole gelling thing. I think that they're not fully confident and comfortable in what they do best offensively. I think they're still kind of figuring out that identity, and I think that at times, it seems like when they miss a lot of shots in a row, they kind of lose that intensity a little bit on defense, and I think it kind of snowballed on them. Iowa's always been, as you guys know, always been a really tough matchup, and I feel like they're really good with ball reversals, and they make you really move a lot. And Rutgers just got, a little bit lost there, I think, in that first half. But I thought it was a great sign to see them battle back the way they did. And that's one thing that, this team hasn't quit. And I think they're really bought in terms of what they're trying to do. They just haven't found the answers yet. And I keep going back to, they're not going to be a top 100 shooting team, but they're not going to be a 350th shooting team either. And I think that, once things start to fall a little bit and they get a little rhythm, I really do think they could snowball in the positive direction. But the Iowa game was obviously disappointing because they came off that really good second half against Ohio State. But, in matchups and everything, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And but it was great to see them respond at home against Indiana. And, again, shot really poorly, but did a lot of other things well. I think the way they're rebounding now is encouraging because I think the last 3 games they're plus 10 or 11 on rebounding margin in all 3. So that was obviously a big concern coming into the Big Tens. And, step by step, I think they're starting to do things better. And, forcing turnovers again has been a big key for them. But it's nice to know that you can count on Rutgers, even when things are bad, to beat Indiana the way they did. That was certainly satisfying.
Geo,
Definitely agree.
Iowa's always been a team that is able to put up a large clip when it comes to scoring, leading the Big Ten in scoring once again. What is it that they do so well on a year-to-year basis that allows for them to get so many buckets?
You know what? They just honestly play team basketball. I'm going back to when we used to play against Keegan Murray, and they didn't really run a play for him. Like everything was kind of just in the flow of the offense. He was rim running. They space very, very well, and team basketball. That was the main thing with them. Then they surround their bigs with shooters. So a very skilled basketball team. They run a lot, get out in transition, and then just team basketball overall. And you got to make shots. That's the name of the game too. We're we're talking about Iowa right now, but with Rutgers, I mean, they're getting a lot of open looks on some of their shots. They're just not knocking them down.
Yep.
Iowa has been the opposite for years to come now. I mean, they're finding their shooters, they're moving the ball extremely well, and then those guys are knocking shots down.
Yeah, Iowa got off to a very hot start to begin the game, 19-5 run, and RU started 1 of 15 for that game. And as you had just alluded to, that's difficult for anybody to stay in any Big Ten contest when shots there's a lid on the rim. And then Iowa made 11 shots in the second half to keep pace and hold the lead into double figures, and big time outputs by Peyton Sanford, game high 24 points, Ben Cricky 18 points. Owen Freeman, man, I don't know where they're cycling in these young bucks from, but fifth Big Ten Rookie of the Week honors for him after that Rutgers outcome. So they got things rolling. And then for Rutgers on the opposite side, you got Mawat Mag, who notched his first career double-double, 24 points, 10 rebounds. He had a dog look to him. His eyes, he was locked in completely. And Austin Williams, 14 points for RU, and a strong performance that he was able to build off going into Indiana.
Yeah, those two, I mean, I know we're talking Iowa, but just thinking about the Indiana game, those two really set the tone energy-wise, defensively, just making all the hustle plays. I love the way Austin Williams was driving to the rim, just with no fear. And like with them too, they're just playing with passion. I was noticing too, the guys seem just so tense, which kind of leads to some of these missed shots. I think it's easy to tense up when you're losing games and you got people hovering over your shoulder talking about Rutgers can't shoot, or we just lost another one, or how are we going to get out of this? Like, it's very easy to tense up when you're hearing all this outside noise. And Coach Peichel talks about it all the time. And I think sometimes as outsiders, it's hard to understand. But he's preaching to them, like, do not pay attention to the noise outside, because it really does make you think differently and shoot differently. And those guys have just said, fuck it, we're going to have fun. You know what I mean? Like, we're just going to have fun. We're going to play with energy. And that's the type of plays and players that Rutgers is going to need right now to kind of get out of that shooting slump. Like, I think now that they beat Indiana and they got that one Big Ten win, it's like the monkey's off your back. Like, you're going to relax a little bit. And now when Mawat gets an open three, or Andre gets an open three, or Gavin gets an open shot, you're a little bit more relaxed because you just won the last game. So I think we'll definitely see a little uptick in shooting now, and guys just having a little bit more fun. I think that started, honestly, with Austin. Like, Austin basically took on that role of just like, no, fuck it, I'm going to play hard as shit, and we're going to have fun out there. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what it was.
I love what he brings to the team. And let's set the scene a little bit ahead of that IU game. You got a state of emergency because of crazy inclement weather, a 7 p.m. tip on Peacock, and nobody has a subscription. So you don't even know how you're going to watch the game and cheer for your Scarlet Knights. But more importantly, Rutgers was 0-for in the Big Ten Conference and seeking its first win. And honestly, I guess if you need to get one, it's nice when you have a team from Indiana coming into Jersey Mike's Arena. And it hasn't been easy for the Hoosiers, especially as of late. They haven't won a game in Piscataway since 2018. Aaron, what were your expectations when you were starting to do your due diligence about Rutgers versus Indiana?
Well, it was, like you said, I mean, it was no better opponent to come in for them to play in the position they've been. And, having those two road games was pretty tough. So to come back to the rack, and I was worried the weather was going to impact just not having the same crowd you normally would have. And Indiana was coming off a real high of beating Ohio State, that comeback win at home. But I thought that Rutgers matched up well with Indiana. And if they played defense the way they're capable of, I thought that, that Rutgers is just, I think, a big thread through the whole win streak against Indiana has been Rutgers just the tougher team. And I think they were very much so again on Tuesday night. And that was just great to see, because, win or lose, when we haven't seen maybe Rutgers be the team that wins the loose balls, gets all the rebounds, that's been a little concerning, I'd say, based on past history, the way the program's been built. So to see that again against Indiana, that was a lot of fun. And obviously to see, Xavier Johnson meltdown was fun as well. So, but I thought, like, Derek Simpson, I thought played really well, because even though he shot poorly, I really liked the way he played. He seems like maybe he is starting to feel like he needs to be that guy in terms of running the offense. And I thought he did that better, even though he missed some shots. But yeah, Xavier Johnson, if you want to talk about that or whatever else, but certainly certainly a win they needed. I don't know if it was a must win, but you didn't want the losses to continue. So hopefully this resets things moving forward.
Yeah, Xavier Johnson is a wild bull, man. And this is not the first instance. I'm going back to uh, games at Indiana and him and Paul Mulcahy getting tangled up. I think it's the game within the game for him. He's like
Definitely.
Patrick Beverly of college basketball with some of his antics
Yeah.
on court. What do you see from him, Gio?
Yeah, I mean, he's been like that. I mean, I remember when he was playing for Pitt, like even in the scout, like, Coach Knight is telling us like, look, he's going to try to get under your skin. Like that's what he does. So I like that comparison, like the Pat Beverly type of guy. But I always liked that. I was talking to fans on Twitter about it because they were asking like, oh, like I'm sure players don't like him. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of both. Like, yeah, I'm not really gonna. No, I'm not gonna want to hang out with the dude, but in terms of the game, like that always excited me because I like that. Like if a guy is trying to get under my skin, like then it really feels like it's like really a battle out there. You know what I mean? Those are the fun games where it gets intense, and there might be a technical or two. It could get chippy, but like those are the games that Rutgers especially usually loves. Like those are the type of games that we would find a way to win. So that was always cool to me. But the play itself was definitely a boneheaded move by him. I mean, you're especially like with Indiana, they don't really have another point guard. When you start subbing in guys like Anthony Leal, it's not looking good for the Indiana side. So he's got to make sure to stay in that game. But obviously, a great thing for if you're on the Rutgers side, getting him out of there.
Yeah, it was like the Twilight Zone pulling up to the stadium. I was sitting in traffic on the Brooklyn Queens Expressway for 3 hours and missed tip completely. So Jerry had to go through tips and keys to the game all by himself. And I get there halfway through and I'm like, Jerry, what happened? Catch me up on things. And he said, Rutgers coming out tough and battling on the boards, and defensively they're locked in. And that's the DNA for this season. But obviously the pillars that Steve Peichel likes to build on for each and every one of his team. And for RU, they get the dub 66-57, holding the Hoosiers to 57 points, which is a Indiana University basketball season low. That's big time. And then plus 11 on the boards, 19 offensive rebounds, 51 rebounds, which is the most for Rutgers in any Big Ten regulation game. And one thing that really stood out that showed that this team was connected defensively and all over the place with great voice activity, 12 versus 1 in second chance points, but shared the game, five players in double figures. Cliff continues to do a really good job with another 5-block game. Do you think that this is a style of play, and this is for you both, that Rutgers can continue to win games if they're not scoring over 70 points, if they continue to ride the heels of rebounding with a toughness and locking teams up and holding them to season lows?
Yeah, I mean, I can start, Aaron. I mean, definitely, that's been Peichel's brand since he got here. So that's what Rutgers is known for. That's what Coach Peichel is known for: is defense, toughness, rebounding, grittiness. Like that is Rutgers basketball. And then if you can hit some shots too, it's going to lead to wins. It's going to lead to success. So you don't need to score 70 points to win games in the Big Ten. My teams in the past, Coach Michael's teams in the past have proven that already. So these guys need to realize that. I think part of it too is there are a lot of new faces on the team and new leaders on the team, and at a certain point you have to realize that you can control what you can control the controllables, which is defense, rebounding, intensity, energy. Like all of those things are non-negotiables because you can do it right every single time. It has nothing to do with skill. Whereas shooting, it's part of basketball. Basketball is an imperfect game. You're gonna miss shots. That's how it goes. But there's other ways to win without making those shots. And if these guys can do that consistently, you're gonna see more wins. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah, totally agree. The whole speed limit with Peichel, 65 and under, and I think part of that too is just not having Mag in the beginning. I think Rutgers couldn't necessarily even play that kind of style, even if they wanted to in the beginning, because I think he just brings so much in terms of being able to play that way. And I think Austin Williams now too. They're both physical. They both have size, and they both. I think they they seem like they enjoy it, in terms of they love
Yeah.
playing defense, and just Austin on that offensive rebound, the way he, his just physically, the way he jumped to the ball and he was so strong with it, like you could tell that he enjoys it. So I think that, the nitty gritty for this team, they needed those guys as part of that, and now they're going to get some consistency with both of them now in the starting lineup. I think that's going to go a long way. And getting the younger guys, I think part of it too is physically, like, Gavin and Jermichael, they're really talented, but they're also freshmen physically. So I think that was part of it. They're
Yeah.
playing bigger minutes early on. And, now that you have Austin and Mag emerging, that's going to help too. So I think, I think it's a great point about a lot of the newcomers just learning kind of the way that things have worked in the past. And once if they can play defense even close to the way they played the other night and they hit some shots, they're going to be able to be competitive against most teams, I would think.
It's anybody, most definitely.
Heard you. Understood. And I'm playing both sides, obviously bringing up some of the noise and what are, maybe a cause for concern, just to make sure that we're highlighting what the reality of what the season has been. And it's been up and down from scoring within the field goal or the 3-point line, not at a high clip for this team. If they continue to turn over teams at this clip, they're going to continue to have scoring opportunities. But layups and free throws in particular have been problematic at certain stints. What do you think is the cause for that at this juncture in the season for this team so far, Gio?
Man, it's a couple of things. It could go back to what I was saying earlier about these guys just being tense, man. I mean, we're talking about Division I high major basketball players. They're able to make layups. You know what I mean? Like this is starting to turn into sort of a mental thing for some of these guys, in my opinion. And I'm not inside. I'm not at the practices. So this is just what it kind of looks like from the outside as a former player, where I'm seeing some of these guys, like body language, just how they're approaching the game sometimes, where it doesn't seem like they're having fun. Like, you got to try to remember that this is a game. This is basketball. This is game day, is showtime. And, that's where you kind of have to go show out and have a good time. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with the layups, with the threes, with everything. Then the other thing too is, I feel like for some of these guys, for Gavin especially, who is a freshman and he's learning, the game just hasn't really slowed down to him yet.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like he's rushing a lot of his shots, and he is someone who I saw a lot in the summer. We played pickup together. Me and him were playing one-on-one together. He's extremely talented. Like,
he's tough.
There's no other way to put it. Like, he's a very, very good basketball player. So when you see the way he's playing in the games, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, except for the fact that he's just kind of rushing everything. Like, his shot doesn't even really look the same as it did in practice. He's not holding his follow through. He's dropping the hand really fast, and sometimes it looks like he doesn't even catch it before he shoots it. He's really not thinking about it. So I think that the more film he watches, the more he practices, the more Big Ten games that he plays in, it'll start to slow down for him, and then that shot will start to feel a little bit better. And that goes the same for J Mike and for Noah, who's first time playing in high major basketball in the Big Ten. All these new guys, even Derek. Like, we talk about Derek like he's a veteran. He's a sophomore.
Right.
Like, my sophomore year, I remember how hard it was, when you go from, maybe the second or third or whatever option you are, to now you're supposed to be the guy coming in. I mean, that's a really tough position to put a sophomore in. It's a tough role in the Big Ten, and especially when you're going up. When I was a sophomore, there was no COVID year. There wasn't 24, 25-year-old seniors. You know what I mean? Like, right now, you're asking a sophomore in college, who I don't think ever reclassed in high school. So we're talking about a young kid, really, to be playing against 23, 24-year-old senior point guards, and to be that guy and to be consistent every single night. Like, that's a really tough spot to put him in. So that's another part to this as well, is that these guys, maybe they just don't have the experience yet, and there are going to be little bumps in the road where they got to learn to, I should lay it up here instead of back for a floater, or I should dump it off here instead of going up against a 7-footer. You know what I mean? That's just little things that you kind of learn from experience but you learn from experience that you're just not gonna be able to learn anywhere else.
Repetition. It is so
Right.
essential in every aspect of life. And I love that Gavin is continuing to show aggressiveness despite not getting the outcomes that he is hoping to see each and every night. He has a shooter's mentality, and that is very, very evident.
He doesn't care.
He does.
He doesn't care.
He's going.
He
to
doesn't
empty
care.
the
I love
clip.
it. I wish I was like that. He doesn't care. He does not. He doesn't hang his head. He's like, fuck it, I'm shooting it again. Like,
To your point,
I love
though,
it.
I think if you are predictable and you're premeditating shots, it's not going to work at this level. So getting in the film room, sitting with the coaches will help him to get it in the flow of the offense, which are only going to uptick his percentages and pay dividend. But I also do love that this team is so reliant on such young players. Jermichael Davis, he's had, what is it, double figures in 4 of his last 6 games. Like, that's big time for any player with that type of assist to turnover ratio. He showed a lot of poise. And when you look back at, what they'll be in their sophomore and junior year, they're going to be a lot better because of what they're learning. They're taking their lumps and bumps and bruises right now in their freshman season.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally agree. Davis, I mean, his assist to turnover ratio has been sick. I mean, over 3-1 is pretty incredible for as much as he's played. And even if you remember back the Princeton game, his first game, he really, he was obviously forcing things, and he just, the way he's developed and learned so quickly is a really positive sign. I think just with the half court too, I think they're just forcing things a little bit. They have a lot of guards now that are good off the dribble, and I don't think that they're necessarily, passing it enough. And kind of being patient enough. So I think that maybe that's part of it. But in terms of the free throws, I actually think Rutgers is in a really good position if they can be close at the end of games, because Derek, was he like 85%? Andre's been really good, close to 80%. Noah's at 80%. So, and you saw against Indiana, if they got the ball to Noah and, Derek and Andre, they were pretty much automatic and closed out that game. So I think that's a huge advantage for them at the end of games. Obviously, some of the big guys are struggling a little bit from the foul line, but I don't think it's as big of a problem as people say it is. I think it's just kind of the flow of the game. What I do think is when they, you mentioned layups a little bit, they're struggling a little bit there, is if they could be a little bit better drawing contact and getting to the line. If you can have those guards get to the line more during the regular part of the game, that will go a long way too, I think.
Appreciate that. You asked me after Ohio State how I felt about the team in the season. I would have said cautiously optimistic. You understanding that there's also a little bit of luck in scheduling. When you put Ohio State and Iowa back to back, anybody's going to be in a tough predicament. It doesn't matter how many points you score. You go into Iowa City, they're going to continue to put up buckets at a very high rate. So I didn't even dive too deep into the Iowa loss because I understood what they were coming off, 2-game road trip, a really tall task for anyone. But after IU, I really like how this team is trending. I think that we see what the DNA could be and what it would take for them to win. And I think that's a really good pivot into what's next for this group. Going out to East Lansing, a place that Rutgers basketball has never won, but I think probably one of the ripest opportunities for them to change the course of history and get their first road win against a Michigan State team that's been up and down in this season in their own right. A lot of high expectations coming into the Big Ten Conference for them this year. Most recently coming off a loss against Northwestern on the road in Chicago. And then now they have an Illinois team that they have to go against on the road. Any initial thoughts about what you think this game will play out like for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights on the road against Michigan State University?
I can start. I think this is another unlucky game for Rutgers, and here's why. If it depends on how it goes tonight against Illinois for Michigan State. If Michigan State loses at Illinois, which honestly I think they will, they will now be 1-4 in the Big Ten. And from what I remember from Tom Izzo, he's not lose. He don't lose 2 games in a row like that. So 3 games in a row. If we're talking about Northwestern, Illinois, he's telling those guys like he's a psycho. Tom Izzo's a psychopath. He's not losing at home to Rutgers. Like that's his mentality, and he's gonna let his point guard know. He's gonna let his big man know. Like if you guys lose me this fucking game, I'm gonna this and that, and like he's gonna freak the fuck out. So that's where I'm a little worried about the game. If they lose to Illinois, Michigan State 1-4 in the Big Ten. That's not who they are as a program. Culturally, they're not a losing program. And then if you're Rutgers, you have to go into their home court when they're on a losing streak. It's dangerous. Michigan State most times in that situation is not going to lose that game. So that's where I'm a little nervous, just just thinking about it in that type of standpoint.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. One thing about the Iowa game for Rutgers too is that was a really quick turnaround. That was like 2.5 days, and to have a noon game. I'm sure you guys, experienced it, but
11 a.m. local.
yeah, I mean that's tough to get up for a game like that and to find your shooting rhythm that early. Obviously, I was used to it, but I think Michigan State could be in the same regard. So I think the key for Rutgers is being physical. If they can be physical from the opening tip, bring it defensively, and be on the glass, they can hang in the game. And if they can just keep it close, I think they have a chance. But you're right. I mean, the mentality of Michigan State is going to have a lot to do with it. That's why I think Rutgers has to be ready to go from the opening tip because, again, they've been falling behind a lot, especially on the road. So you can't fall back 19-5 at Michigan State. You won't have a chance. So I'm sure Pico's going to be in their ear about never winning there before. So it certainly will be telling in terms of this team's mentality. How much can they build off the Indiana game, and they will probably be going into a hornet's nest. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely keeping eyes on the result against Illinois at State Farm Arena tonight. Despite the adversity that the Illini are dealing with their star player being out, still finding ways to win. So we'll see if Michigan State can put together a tough dub on the road against Illinois. And then lastly, I think as we start to kind of look ahead and conclude this particular episode, all 14 Big Ten teams rank in the top 50 in remaining strength of schedule. And are in the Big Ten Conference, keeping it status quo, continuing to beat up on one another. Number one, Purdue going down recently against Nebraska. And I'm sure that's not going to be the last time this season that there is a massive upset. When you look at the next 5 games for Rutgers, they have, as we just talked about, Michigan State University, then Nebraska at home, Illinois, Purdue, home against Penn State, and then home against Michigan. What do you think are some of the realistic expectations on how many of those games they can win?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the schedule before. It's tough. I mean, they could start 2-6, 1-7, and not necessarily be playing bad basketball. They're just playing really good teams right now. But I do think expanding on that, like I mean, February is very winnable. Like every game, I think they could win. Obviously, that's a lot easier said than done, and you don't win every winnable game. But it's a lot different in terms of Maryland twice, Michigan twice, Penn State, Minnesota. Never easy, we know, at Minnesota, but even Northwestern at home is manageable. It just gets a lot better after this 4-game clip coming up. So I think that's where Pico comes in, keeping the team together, keeping them believing, keeping them fighting and playing hard. And if they can just stay together, and if they could steal 1 or 2, if they go 2-2 in this next 4-game stretch, I would feel really good about where this team's at. I think they could definitely still get 10, 11, possibly 12 Big Ten wins. If they go 0-4, I'd be worried about their mentality, and I think that's where you have to have faith in Pikel and the coaching staff in terms of keeping them together, because I do think they could get on a roll pretty quickly with the way the schedule looks. I think January 31st on, it's a lot more manageable.
Yeah, definitely agree. Got to protect home court. And I'm looking at the schedule right now. You're right. February definitely is a lot easier than this little 4-game stretch they got coming up. But just how can you hang in there, hang tough? Like the Nebraska game's non-negotiable. You got to win that one. You got to protect home court. Purdue, definitely want to try. Obviously, you're trying to win every game, but again, home court. You want to protect home court at all costs, and then that leads you into the February schedule where you're at Michigan, you're at Maryland. These are some teams that are definitely beatable. You got Wisconsin at home. It's a winnable game, and then that's when you start to feel a little bit better about yourself. But if you go 0-4 and you're not protecting home court against Nebraska, then it's going to be tough to go on the road at Michigan and win that one. It just feels different. So, you kind of feel like you're out of the race almost at that point. And then it's more of a mental game.
Love it. And it's currently January 11th, 2024. At this moment in time, what are your expectations for where this team could end up in the postseason?
Well, I mean, I think obviously a winning record. You want to see him get a winning record. I would say anything less than 8-12 in the Big Ten, which would put him, 8-12 gets him at 16-15 going to the Big Ten tournament. That's where I hope that's the floor. It's not going to be easy, but I think if that's where they end up, I think you can't be every year is going to be a little different. I think they've had some challenges against them. So I think you would feel good about this team going to the postseason and possibly make the NIT from that. They make a little run in the Big Ten tournament. Anything less than that, you worry about just their mentality at the end of the season and in the Big Ten tournament. And you'd hate to see them miss the postseason altogether. I don't think that has any indication on the long-term future of the program. But just for the guys on this team, you want to see them succeed. And like we were saying, they're going through a lot of adversity right now. They probably have some more ahead. If they can kind of come out on the other side in February and really start to click and keep guys in the lineup, I think they can do that. I think they can still make the postseason. NCAA tournament obviously is a big climb right now, but I think ruling them out also, no one taught us better than Geo and Ron and those guys 2 years ago. You can't count this program out, and it's only January 11th, like you said, and that's college basketball. That's what the beautiful part of it is. And why it's so much better than college football, in my opinion, is the parity. And the Big Ten is wide open. So why can't Rutgers make a run in February with that schedule and end up dancing after all? It's obviously an uphill battle, but I don't think it's impossible.
Love that. And Gio, last one for you. I was interested to ping this off of you. It's also a really good year for the Big Ten in regards to overall personalities. You got Caitlin Clark coming in like one of the Beatles at Jersey Mike's Arena and completely selling it out. You got Tominaga coming through to Jersey Mike's Arena. I'm hearing the Japanese Steph Curry. You keeping up with these players in both men's and women's basketball?
Yeah, Caitlin came in, got a triple-double. I mean, that was crazy. It's crazy. It's really cool to see her selling out every arena that she goes to. I mean, that's crazy. That's really cool to see. I mean, the way she plays is just honestly insane. The way basketball has evolved is crazy. I mean, and you know this, Austin and Aaron, you may know this as well. I do basketball training, so I got all the young girls that I'm doing training for. They all asking me like if I can introduce them to Caitlin. I'm like, I don't know Caitlin like that. Like, I can't help you with that. Like they think that I'm some superstar that has the end with her. I'm like, listen, I don't know her like that. So that it was cool. It's just cool to see like the younger kids too looking up to her, and it wasn't just the girls too. It was the boys that wanted to go see her play, and that's really cool for me to just to see these young kids looking up to her and the way she's playing. And then Tominaga, he's a good player, man. He's a good player. It's funny. I really didn't think he was that good when we were playing against him the first time when I was in school, because we isolated him on the post whenever he was in the game. So I think he was guarding Caleb McConnell at the time, and we just ran like 3 post-up plays in a row, and he either fouled or got scored on, and they just sat him on the bench. They literally couldn't keep him in the game. I think right now they do a good job of hiding him on defense, and he's again going back to experience. Now he's played in Big Ten. He's starting to learn a couple different tricks that he can do. But offensively, he's always been a killer. And Coach Peichel and the staff they told us that in scout when I was playing. But man, the way he plays too. I mean, again, going back to basketball, just evolving. It's really cool to see where some of these guys are pulling up from and girls are pulling up from, and they just have no fear when they shoot.
Yeah, my arc and my range was as far as the horseshoe in the middle of the paint. So I wasn't pulling any trays or 3-pointers back in my college career. It is what it is. So I really enjoy seeing what the game has evolved into. But big time episode, Aaron. Really appreciate you joining us and your insight. You do a phenomenal job. Analytically inclined, as we had joked about before. So looking forward to having you back on the pod as we move forward in the future. Anything else, on your side before we depart?
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was great to talk Rutgers hoops. And I just, for longtime fans, we've been through a lot with this program. And social media obviously is, so prominent now. And you hear voices, get really negative and stuff. But for fans that have been around a long time, I mean, if this team is so likable, and just because there's a little bit of adversity right now, it just I expect that fans stick with it, and next year could be really exciting. But I still think that this year could too, and work that you guys are doing and everybody in the Rutgers media space, I feel like there's more attention on this program than ever before, which is a good thing. And people care more than ever. So I think even when you see negative attitudes, sometimes it's better than indifference that this program had Austin, I know you saw some of that also, like after your career and the way it was before Geo got here, and to see it now, live through as much as I have with this program, even when this season is a little bit not the way we hoped. I think there's still hope for this season and the long run, and I hope people don't get discouraged and just have long-term belief in this coaching staff and Peichel and what he's done. Because if you look at where everything was before he got here and where we are now, I mean, this is not terrible times that people want to try to make it out that it is. We're in a much better place, and I think sometimes the adversity is only going to make this program and this coaching staff and this team better.
Yeah, we'll have another episode on the Freddie Hill and Mike Rice era at some point.
We'll
bring the whiskey.
I was going to say
one.
We're going to have to drink for that one. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, awesome stuff, my guy. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate everybody listening and tuning in for this episode of the Are You Listening podcast. We'll see how everything plays out, and we'll check you on the next episode.